Thanks to all of you for being here today, especially, I know, taking time out of your weekend is kind of a big deal. And I also wanted to say thanks for sharing snippets of your personal story. For those of you that just got up a few minutes ago, I was just sitting in the back, and it was pretty inspiring to hear. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm really honored to be helping kick off the day with all of you. I thought I would just talk a little bit about my own personal story, how I ended up where I am, and some of the things that I've learned along the way. And I guess I'll start off by making a confession. I was not one of those kids that wanted to study computer science from the day I came out of the womb. I actually didn't even touch a computer probably until I was 10, and even then it was to play games. I was playing Oregon Trail or Lemmings or something like that. I didn't teach myself to code in my spare time. I was probably running around with the neighborhood kids or something like that. So I wasn't one of those kids that had computer science in their blood from the early days. But there was something that I liked to do from when I was young, and that was to build things with my hands. It started with Legos, and then I graduated to building shelves or furniture with my dad, to wiring our media cabinet, to fixing things around the house. So I guess I knew from an early age that I wanted to be able to create things. And in fact, we took this test in 3rd grade that was supposed to tell us what we were going to be when we grew up. And it was one of those tests that was totally see-through, so you could tell exactly how the questions and the answers were going to correlate to what occupation you were going to end up with. And so, like any 7-year-old, I decided to game the system. And so I picked the exact answers that I thought correlated with building or engineering, though I might not have called it that at the time. And I think my test results came back and it said I should be a carpenter or a watchmaker. I might have overcorrected a little bit. But I was happy about that because the essence was there, the career that said I should use my hands to build things. And I have to admit, this was much to my parents, in particular my father's dismay. He was, like most parents of his generation who had immigrated from elsewhere in the world, India in his case, job stability was really top of mind. And I think it's understandable from their viewpoint. My dad is actually an engineer. My mom is an accountant. And the economy hadn't always been nice to them. So when they looked at me and what they wanted for me, they really wanted me to have an occupation or a career that was really recession-proof. And for them, that was medicine. So my dad really wanted me to be a doctor. And honestly, I can't even use the past tense there because he will still call me up and ask me if I want to take the MCAT, just in case. Over the weekend, because I can just do that. So if my dad had had his way, my path wouldn't have consisted of MIT. It wouldn't have consisted studying computer science and electrical engineering, and it wouldn't have consisted of Google. But to be fair, my 3rd grade rebellion was not the only reason my path ended up the way it was. As I was looking back and just thinking through all of the major moments and I guess, decisions that led to where I am today, I realized that there was another common thread, and that was this. When faced with a decision where one of the choices is really uncomfortable or scary, do that thing. Because those are the moments and those are the times where you actually learn and grow the most. And to be fair, I've done the opposite too, so I can compare and contrast. And it's, of course, that fear is not the only reason to do something, but it should go in the pros column and not the cons column. And that's what I thought I'd talk a little bit about today. So the first really difficult decision I remember making was where to go to college. I think at the time, my dad was still partially convinced I would come to my senses and go to med school, at least stay home close to Alabama. But I was fortunate enough to get into MIT, although I wasn't sure if I wanted to go. It was really far away, it was supposed to be really hard, and I didn't know if I could cut it, to be honest. I was used to being the top of my class or near the top of my class in Alabama, and I knew that wasn't going to be the case if I went to MIT. So I was kind of scared to kind of make that leap. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was going to college to learn. And if I was going there to learn, I might as well surround myself with people that I can learn from. I might as well be a small fish in a big pond, learning from everyone around me. And so I went to MIT, and over the 4 years, I learned a whole bunch of interesting CS-y things, but I also learned that I could do it, that I could cut it there. And that actually gave me a lot of confidence for the next steps in my life. And the next step in my life was deciding what to do after college. So this was back in 2003, and it was kind of after a little mini economic turndown, like a little mini bubble burst. I remember a lot of my friends who had graduated the year before were given job offers that were then rescinded before they even started their jobs. So a lot of people actually across the country were staying in school because that was advisable, I guess, at the time. And MIT in particular is pretty research and academic focused, so most of the people I knew, especially CS students, were staying on to do research, get their PhDs, masters, whatever. So first of all, the decision to go into industry was kind of leaving everything I knew behind, leaving all my friends, leaving research, leaving academia, leaving school for the first time behind. And then that was compounded when I was trying to decide where to go to work. So back then, Google was not the household name that it is today. In fact, when I told my parents about it, they called it Goofle. And so I was deciding between that and Microsoft, which of course was very well known. And so for them, thinking again about job stability, they were like, absolutely, hands down, you should go to Microsoft. Absolutely. And many of the people I talked to gave me that same advice. And I guess for them, from that perspective, like it makes sense. Like how stable could a company called Goofle be, right? Doesn't seem wise. But I wasn't so convinced. I wasn't so sure. And I debated back and forth for 3 weeks. I lost so much sleep just trying to think about where I should go work. One day I would be like, yes, Microsoft, clearly the right choice. And then the next day I would be like, no, maybe I should try it. Maybe I should do Google. And I was just really torn. And in the end, there was one thing that I just couldn't let go of. I remember after my interviews at Microsoft, it was a full day of interviews, I was exhausted. Like you would expect, right? Like interviews are really draining. So I got back to the hotel, and I think I just slept for like 12 hours after those interviews. But after my interviews at Google, I was energized. Like 12 years later, I can still remember how I felt after a full day of interviews at Google. It was I don't know, it was like tingly. Like I could feel it in my body, and I couldn't let that go. I just couldn't let that feeling go. And so ultimately, I decided to come to Google. And it has been an amazing 11 and a half years since. I joined when Google was pretty young, so I got to see it grow, go through immense periods of growth. I think we have 50 times the number of employees now than we did when I joined. I got to work on a ton of interesting projects, from search to Google Toolbar to Maps to Chrome, where I am now. I got to work with a lot of amazing people. Again, I'm a small fish in a big pond, and it's really great to be able to learn from everyone around me. It's also where I met my husband, so it all worked out, I guess, in the end. As a quick side note, actually, in making that decision, I learned this tactic for how to make hard decisions that I thought I would share because I found it extremely useful. So what I do is I try on the decision before I actually commit. Kind of like you would try on a dress or a pair of pants before you buy them, right? So what I do is I tell myself I've made the decision, but I don't tell anyone else. I don't actually send any emails or formally accept, but I tell myself I've made it. I sleep as though I made it, and then I wake up and I see how I feel. And if I don't regret it, I know I've made the right decision. And I have used that for many of the tough decisions I have made since then and told other people about it, and it tends to get positive reviews. So I thought I would pass that along. In fact, I used it to name my first kid. I would call my belly different names every day until one just kind of stuck and felt right. Having a little less luck this time. But I am trying on multiple names, so I'm still trying on, to see what works. The next really difficult part, or I guess difficult decision, came about 6 years later, so the summer of 2009, where I had the opportunity to go to Zurich, lead a new project with Google Maps, and manage a team for the very first time. In addition to that, I had just gotten married, so I would be living with somebody for the first time in my life, in a new country, with no friends or family, working at a job that I was 100% convinced I was totally unqualified for. I was going to be expected to lead a team I had never met, work on a product I had never worked on, and manage a team of people, many of whom were older than me and considerably more experienced than me. And I remember being on our honeymoon, the last week of our honeymoon in Bora Bora, of all places, just thinking to myself, like, I can't do it. Like, this is crazy, I'm underqualified. I have been somehow fooling people for 6 years, and they're gonna finally find me out. Like, it's over, the gig is up, like, I'm done. And I thought about it some more, and I have to admit, with the help of a very supportive husband, I came to realize 3 things. First, if I had indeed been fooling people for 6 years, I had done a pretty damn convincing job. So maybe I could keep it up for a couple more years. But more importantly, that the feeling I was having, this imposter syndrome, is something that is shared with people like at all levels, men and women alike. So I wasn't alone. It was completely natural to have that feeling. Second, that I had a bunch of people that believed in me. My husband believed in me. My manager at the time and mentor, Marissa Meyer, believed in me. My new manager believed in me. And honestly, if they all believed in me, maybe I should believe in me, just a little bit. And then third, this was the path I had chosen. I had chosen product management. I knew one day I was going to be in a position where I was going to end up managing people if I did well. So I might as well try it, right? And if I fail, I fail. At least I will have learned something in the process. And so I went. And it turned out to be one of the best experiences. I have learned things I couldn't have even predicted if I tried to write them down on paper. I learned that I really like managing people, and I'm actually okay at it. I learned how to come on to a new team and gain credibility. I learned about myself that when I do come on to a new team, I feel miserable and incompetent for about 6 months, and then magically it seems to get better after that point. I learned about building products for users with a completely different perspective than the one that I was used to. And I learned about being a better coworker. Being 9 time zones away from Mountain View for 2 years, I brought back with me a lot of empathy about working with people in different offices that have been really useful ever since. On a personal level, my husband and I traveled the world. We got introduced to new countries and cultures and cuisines. We got to know each other much better during our first 2 years of marriage, because we were isolated together with each other. So it was amazing, and I almost didn't do it. I almost let fear and uncertainty and insecurity keep me from what turned out to be one of the biggest learning experiences I've had in the last decade. So I guess I will end with another confession. Doing this talk wasn't an easy decision for me. I mean, obviously not as hard as deciding to move to another country for a couple of years, but it still wasn't easy. Like, while I've done a decent amount of public speaking, I guess I've never gotten up in front of a bunch of people and talked about myself or my experiences or things like that. So this was pretty uncomfortable. And I remember when Natalie asked me if I would be willing to do it, I immediately thought, I don't know what I'm gonna say to hundreds of people. I don't know if I have an interesting story or something I can talk about. And to be honest, oh my God, it was so much easier just to say no. I mean, I have a good excuse, right? I'm 6.5 months pregnant, I'm tired, I have migraines, I have a 2-year-old at home, I have a full-time job. Like, it was so much easier to just say no and not push myself to go that extra bit and work on this and do this. And I realized, though, that this engaging with other professional women, getting together and building a community where we support and we celebrate each other, this is important to me. This is something that I want to take part in. And so before I went to sleep at night, I told myself I was going to do it. I didn't tell Natalie yet. I told myself I was going to do it. I slept on it. I woke up. I felt good about it. I really did that to make this decision. And it felt right. So I emailed her and I told her I would do it, and here I am. And in the process, at least I've learned a few things. I've learned a little bit about myself. I've gotten some time to reflect on my path. I've learned a bit about taking risks in the face of fear and uncertainty. In fact, especially in the face of fear and uncertainty. Because from my experience, what I found is it's those times where you not only have a steep learning curve, but you have the step function learning curve. It's where you grow and you thrive and you flourish the most. And it makes it worthwhile. So I hope the next time any of you are faced with such a decision, one of which feels really uncomfortable or scary or pushes you out of your comfort zone, I hope you take the time and the opportunity to try it on and ultimately go for it. Thank you again for being here today.